DW Africa Link.
Who hasn't imagined being a king or a queen ruling their own vibrant kingdom? I'll admit, I've daydreamed about it myself, but always within my own homeland. For Nigeria's Igbo community, the tradition of crowning a king stretches beyond borders, especially in the diaspora. What started as a colorful celebration of Igbo identity in South Africa, a coronation ceremony, quickly unraveled into protests and backlash against migrant communities. And this isn't an isolated case. Similar tensions have erupted in Ghana as well. So, was it simply a cultural mix up, or did it expose deeper rifts over migration, leadership, and belonging?
This has got to do with the total disrespect of South African constitution, total disrespect of laws and order in South Africa.
That's what's coming up. I'm Lucy Riley, and you're welcome to Africa Link, the podcast connecting you to the stories that matter.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
Weeks after the coronation of an Igbo king in South Africa sent shockwaves through the community, tensions still simmer across the Eastern Cape. In Kugongpo, formerly East London, a ceremony meant to unite the Igbo community turned chaotic, sparking protests, violence, and a wave of fear that left businesses shattered and families behind closed doors. While organizers and Nigeria's High Commission insists the title was symbolic, South African traditional leaders say it crossed legal and cultural boundaries, feeding into broader issues around migration, authority, and coexistence. So, was this ceremony the straw that broke the camel's back, or did it expose tensions that were already simmering? To help us make sense of this, I'm joined by Professor Charles Nwekeaku, Secretary of the Igbo Elders Consultative Forum, and DW's Thuso Khumalo, who has been reporting on the situation from South Africa. Thuso, you extensively covered the story when it broke, and videos of the controversial installation quickly went viral, and tensions escalated soon after. Briefly take us back to Kugongpo.
It all started with the ceremony held in Gugombo in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa on the 14th of March 2026 this year. In this ceremony, a Nigerian national known as Solomon Ezike was announced as Igwe Ndibo, which people understand to be meaning King Ndibo. This immediately attracted condemnation from traditional institutions, and you had also anti-foreign organizations like March and March, Operation Dudula jumping in. Later on, you saw also political parties also coming in, including Action SA in South Africa. Fast forward, on the 30th of March 2026, March and March, which is an anti-foreigner kind of organization or movement, joined by various organizations, including traditional leaders, they organized a march in Gugombo against the coronation of this Nigerian national, which they believe is declaring himself a king, and according to them, they wouldn't accept that to happen. Then it is during this particular march when it is alleged a protester who was part of that march was stabbed by allegedly a foreign national. Then hell broke loose there. You had the march turning violent and leading to torching of about a dozen of cars, and property was damaged. Anything that protesters believed was linked or belonged to foreign nationals, it was vandalized at that particular time. But since then, you had a lot of condemnation coming in from different quarters, including from the South African cabinet that described the coronation as a kindergarten gimmick with no legal basis. And also they described it as an unbecoming behavior by those involved in that coronation. You also had the Nigerian High Commission coming in and condemning it, saying it's an act of irresponsibility, and it went on to give apologies to the traditional leaders in South Africa. So this is the scenario, this is how it started, but these tensions are now have subsided as far as that event is concerned, although the anti-foreigner sentiments still ring around that issue.
We'll come back to you shortly, Thuso, especially on the sentiments and the perception of how this all played out. But Professor, this is not the first time. We've seen similar ceremonies happening in other parts of Africa, like, for instance, Ghana last year, where there was some controversy over the installation of an Igbo kingdom or an Igbo village, which surfaced. But fortunately or unfortunately, those plans were later dropped after the government intervened. So we want to understand, at its core, what is the purpose of installing Igbo traditional titles in other countries, and how are they meant to function?
Thank you so much. I think the whole thing, whether you talk of that of Ghana last year, the relatively current one in Southern Africa, I think is a communication gap and lack of knowledge. First is that in Nigeria, there is no constitutional rule for traditional rulers. Whether you talk of the emirs of the north, the obas of the Yoruba, or the Ezes of the southeast, there's no constitutional rule for them. So whether they are coronated or not coronated doesn't really mean much other than custodian of culture and tradition. They don't have constitutional rule. Now, when you leave Nigeria and come to Igbo land, specifically, where you talk of the Ezeship, the Eze, they don't have, even before the advent of colonialism, there was nothing like Eze in Igbo land. Powers were shared among different groups, the age grades, the village assembly, the titled holder, that is Ozo, Nze, and so forth. Powers were shared in Igbo land before the advent of colonialism. No, you cannot see any person exercising legislative function or executive function alone. The powers were decentralized and shared among different groups. That was the situation before the advent of colonialism. So now, you now talk of coronation in Southern Africa. It's because the people of South Africa, and perhaps people in Nigerian High Commission, did not understand. That's why I say communication gap. That these people, even in Igbo land, they don't have that. They don't have any constitutional role to play. So even the coronation in Southern Africa doesn't give them any constitutional role. So I think people mistook them with their own king, the king of KwaZulu-Land and the others that have constitutional rule. I think they believe that the Igbos were coming there to take over power. These SS don't have any constitutional rule, even in Nigeria. In Igbo land, they don't exercise much a thing. So they don't have that power, which people arrogate unto them. I don't know how but the Nigerian High Commission in South Africa should have explained that to the people, that these people don't have any constitutional rule in Nigeria, generally, and in Igbo land specifically.
Understand what you're saying here, Professor, that, there's no constitutional rule for these traditional leaders, and that, that particular title, it doesn't mean much other than tradition and culture. But do you see that many South Africans clearly saw something different? I mean, is it realistic to expect host countries to separate these cultural symbolism from political authority when the imagery resembles kingship? I mean, you've talked about whose responsibility it was to communicate it clearly, but for the many South Africans, they were seeing something else.
Yes, even Haneze in Southern Africa, I believe, has explained so too. It's left for the Nigerian High Commission to explain that the Ezes in Nigeria do not have any constitutional rule. Therefore, they are not going to, if they don't have constitutional role to play in Nigeria, how are they going to play constitutional role in Southern Africa? They don't have that role. But I think there was a communication gap. The people mistook them because in their own place, they have kings. In Igbo land, we don't have kings. We don't have kings. We have Eze, and Eze is not equivalent to king. King, as a matter of fact, especially the absolute king, has executive power, legislative power, and judicial power combined. Like the emirs of the north, they also have ecclesiastical power, 4 powers combined in one. In Igbo land, they don't have, except to be the custodian of culture and tradition. In Southern, Igbos are proud of their tradition, and that's why I believe outside Igbo land, they do that. I don't know the extent they did it to have generated the detention, but absolutely, they don't have any constitutional rules. So they cannot usurp any power, which they don't have there.
Mm-hmm. Thuso, I want to loop you back in here. I mean, this is all coming against the backdrop of long-standing tensions around immigration, crime, and even the proliferation of foreign-owned businesses in South Africa. To what extent are those broader frustrations feeding into the intensity of the protests that we were seeing?
Let me start by clarifying that indeed the High Commissioner here, Nigerian High Commission Office, explained that this coronation has no legal basis. This coronation is just a cultural symbol. But for South Africans, that explanation has not become enough, because here in South Africa, the traditional and the kingship or the traditional roles are governed by the Traditional and Coexistence Leadership Act. So that's a legal instrument. For you to declare yourself a king or to declare the chief, it has to go through those standards. So for South Africans in their environment, their understanding is you are venturing into a territory that's governed by law and not using that law. So I think the understanding, the anger of the South African came from that we've got these outsiders who come into our country and declare themselves king. And also, one thing that you should note here in South Africa is that kingship is territorial. Once you declare yourself a king, you have a territory. And if you do that in somebody's territory, it becomes a problem. So this is the background. But coming back to your question, already when this issue came up, we had already these anti-foreigner sentiments that are coming because of the immigration issues in this country. South Africans are concerned that there's too many immigrants in the country. Secondly, there's too many undocumented immigrants in the country. They've always complained about this because they are saying it is because of these immigrants that they are not getting jobs, that there's crime in the country, although some of these things, they are not verified. But this is the background. So when this thing happened, it played into those boiling temperatures that were already brewing underground, and it became a chance. I mean, you had one of the leaders during the march saying the Nigerians are their number one targets in this country because of the way they've handled themselves, because of the way they've dealt with the girls, saying they promote prostitution and all those things. Of course, I should put it on record that there's no official record verifying all those allegations. But we've got this already playing into this, where locals are frustrated by the numbers of immigrants. Also, you've got other immigrants who have been participating in criminal activities. And this also plays along. And they say, okay, look at this now. They're declaring themselves king. They've been committing crimes here. So the immigration issues in the country, especially illegal immigration, which is a big problem in this country, assisted this issue to be blown out of proportion. I understand exactly where our expert is coming from, to say in Nigeria this is what it means, but in South Africa it means something differently, and it was aided not only by the misunderstanding but also by the fact that already there are emotions against the presence of many immigrants who South Africans are thinking they are squeezing their spaces in hospitals, in schools, in jobs, and in all other things.
Professor, let me loop you in on this because I could hear some of your reactions on this.
Yes.
But even so, Professor, just holding that thought, if similar ceremonies by foreign groups were held inside Igbo communities in Nigeria, complete with kings and symbols of authority, I want to believe there would likely be outrage. Should Igbo diaspora leaders expect host countries to be reacting differently?
I've told you that even in Igbo land, they don't have that territorial authority. So people will not take them as much. But as I said before, it was communication gap. As a matter of fact, these Nigerian nationals there, they are doing legitimate business. If any person violates immigration law, that person should be tried according to the South African law, and not for citizens to take laws into their hand. We don't encourage our people to go and violate any immigration law. If they do that, the government of Southern Africa should arrest and try them. And it's wrong to loop all of that. I think there was a kind of indirect aggression among the South Africans over this. You remember that last year, the issue of xenophobia, they said that Nigerian men were taking their girlfriends, especially Igbo men. What is wrong about that? Is it not fundamental human freedom of association? I think there was an indirect aggression, but that notwithstanding, we want them to understand that in Igbo land, these traditional rulers don't have territorial authority. And if they don't have it from their state authority, they cannot have it outside. But I also believe that Ohaneze worldwide is coming out with a definite action on that to curtail, to moderate the conduct of our people outside Igbo land. And so I think that will be taken care of. But be that as it may, I think there was a total communication gap, a misunderstanding.
Right. I hear you. I hear you, Professor. And can you honestly rule out that some ties to assert power or even economic control in host communities?
How is it South African government that will give them the power? They don't have that power in Nigeria. I've told you that if you get the Nigerian constitution, go through it. You don't see the powers given to. A few years ago, the Nigerian national had the national the constitution, and I asked them, you are giving
Yeah. So, Thuso, after the unrest, there are fears that this could resurface. Is there any concern about reprisals or even renewed protests? And what does this episode tell us about the current state, over the anti-immigrant sentiment in the region? Are we likely to see this happening again and recurring?
If we look at the incident itself, as far as this incident is concerned, I think authorities managed to tame it there in Kugombo, and we like not to see it happening to this extent. But already, because of this incident, we have had a number of organizations that are now standing up to saying foreigners must go. Just today, I saw one video of one of the leaders was appearing in court because a protection order was issued out by a foreign national, so he had to be called to court. And the sentiments there from the people were saying these foreigners must go. They cannot take us to court because of this. So you are likely to see these events even going and strengthening because of this one event, which of course was misinterpreted because of the realities on the ground here in South Africa. There are organizations like Operation Tutula, like March and March. If you listen to Jacinta Ngobese, the leader of March and March, she says, this is the time for us to fight for our country. This is the time for us to rise. It is the youngsters who should be taking control because the government has failed us. So we are likely to see some kind of these movements putting more and more effort in trying to encourage or sending foreigners out of the country. In Kwanongoma, where they in KwaZulu-Natal, you had already some pronouncements by certain organizations to say, by this time, we want all foreigners gone out of this place because I think you are crowding us. I think you are causing all sorts of allegations that, of course, have not been verified. So we are likely, because of the momentum that was generated by this event, to see more and more of these protests that are saying foreigners must go and leave South Africa.
Okay. Professor, I'd like to give you the final word. Given how volatile these situations can become, especially in countries already grappling with immigration tensions, are there clear guidelines or oversight within Igbo leadership structures to prevent cultural initiatives from escalating into diplomatic or social crisis?
The Ohanese worldwide is coming out with a general framework to guide the conduct of our people in diaspora, especially people that are associated with traditional institutions. We are coming out with a general framework, but be that as it may, I also think it's the responsibility of South African government to carry on enlightenment on their nationals. Let them understand that these areas don't have territorial authority. Therefore, they are not in any way competing with them. Moreover, these people have come there and invested in a way they help to build the South African economy. Any person that doesn't have legitimate documents to be there should be tried according to South African laws. But people who have legitimate documents should be allowed to do their business unmolested. They should also remember they are now asking the fellow African nationals to go, especially in Nigeria. They should not forget in a hurry that in Nigeria played a formidable role for them to attain independence during their struggle against apartheid and neocolonialism. They should not remember, they should not forget that Nigeria in particular played a fundamental role. And that contributed in the detriment of General Murtala Mohammed for supporting Southern Africa, liberation struggle in Southern Africa. So they should treat Nigerian nationals with respect because Nigeria helped them. So even if few Nigerians in any way violate their law, let those people be tried. And they should also remember South Africa is a member of African Union and should remember that African nationals are allowed to do their legitimate business in outside their countries. And so Nigerian nationals should not be selected for victimization or anything. If few Nigerians misbehave there, let them be tried according to the laws of South Africa. And innocent people should not be affected. And let Nigerians be allowed to carry on their business because they are helping to build South African economy.
Right. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Thank you so much.
What followed wasn't just confusion, but mounting anger over identity, authority, and belonging. These are some of the voices from the community.
This has got to do with the total disrespect of South African constitution, total disrespect of laws and order in South Africa, where you see foreigners, especially African foreigners, doing pronouncements in South Africa which are against the country. And, it's unfortunate that houses were burned, shops were looted, and cars were burned. But then this was about to happen. And this was one thing which was going to happen. You cannot challenge a nation in their own country and think you can get away with it. What happened in Kugombo is unfortunate, but then it's well within our rights as South African.
Our freedom that we fought for, it must be respected. And the worst part that we have actually observed, you even undermine our law enforcement.
Yes.
You've got no respect of our police.
Moments like these reveal just how tightly culture, identity, and community are intertwined, especially when they cross borders. Honoring tradition is important, But it can't come at the expense of the laws and people around us. When honest conversations take center stage and mutual respect leads the way, communities can do more than coexist. They can thrive together with dignity, empathy, and understanding. Share your thoughts with us on Facebook at DW Africa. Listen on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabe. I'm Lucy Riley. Thanks for listening.